My son, sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. And when they turn their back on you, the only thing you can do is take back what they've tried to take from you. This is the story of how my family betrayed me and how I reclaimed everything I built, from my son to my legacy. Hi, my name is Sadaf, and I'm 77 years old. I never imagined I'd be telling a story like this, but life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. I spent my entire life building something for my family, sacrificing my time, my energy, and my heart, only to find that the ones I loved most were the ones who turned their backs on me. This is my story, a story of betrayal, of strength, and ultimately of taking back everything they thought they could take from me. When my husband Amir passed away, I was left to raise our son Ali on my own. It felt like the world had suddenly become a much darker place. Losing him was devastating, but I couldn't afford to fall apart. Ali was just 12 and he needed me. I had no choice but to carry on, even though every day felt like I was dragging myself through the motions. It wasn't just grief I had to contend with. It was the overwhelming responsibility of being both mother and father to my son. We didn't have much back then. Our little family business, a small printing shop Amir and I started together, was just beginning to take off. It was hard work, but it was something we were proud of. And after Amir's death, I poured everything I had into it, determined to give Ali a future. I made sure we lived modestly, but that the business flourished. Every extra hour I worked was one less hour I spent with him, but I told myself it was for his own good. The guilt I felt for not being there was overwhelming, but I convinced myself that the sacrifices were worth it. I worked late into the night, sometimes falling asleep in the office, just so I could keep the business running smoothly. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want Ali to feel the void of losing his father without also knowing that his mother was going to give him the best life possible. But in the process, I missed out on so much with him. He grew up before my eyes, and before I realized it, we had drifted apart. I didn't notice it at first, not until he started high school and became more independent, more distant. He never said anything outright, but I could see the distance between us growing. It wasn't just his age. It was the unspoken resentment that had built up over the years. I had always put the business first, and he had always been second. Then came college. The day he left for school, I thought it would be the hardest day of my life. I thought it would break me. But surprisingly, it didn't. Ali seemed excited, almost relieved, like he was ready to step out into the world and live his life on his terms. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or hurt. It felt like the first step in him leaving me completely. The first few months were hard, but we still talked often. He called when he needed money or advice. I'd send him whatever he needed without a second thought. I thought he would come back to me, but he didn't. The calls became less frequent, and when he did call, it wasn't to check in. It was always because he was short on cash, needed help with something, or wanted me to send him care packages. At first, I didn't think much of it. He was in college, he was busy. I didn't want to bother him. But as the months turned into years, I began to realize that I was no longer his first priority. He had his own life, his own friends, his own world, and I wasn't part of it. I tried to keep busy with the business. I threw myself into it even more, taking on extra clients, making more sacrifices to ensure we stayed ahead of the competition. Our printing company had grown substantially by the time Ali finished college. We had moved into a larger office space and the business was thriving. But there was still a part of me that felt empty. My son was a stranger to me now, and I could feel it in every conversation we had. And then came Sarah. She entered our lives like a whirlwind. She was beautiful, intelligent, and successful. I had hoped she would be a positive influence on Ali. someone who would bring him back to his roots, someone who would see the value in family and hard work. But from the moment I met her, something about her didn't sit right with me. I tried to push my doubts aside. After all, she seemed perfect for him. She was articulate, confident, and ambitious. But there was something in the way she looked at me when we talked about the business, something that made me uncomfortable. Have you ever thought about selling the company? She asked me one evening when we came to visit. You've been running it for so many years now. Don't you want to enjoy your retirement? I remember feeling a cold chill run down my spine. It was the first of many questions she would ask about the business, about the future, about what would happen when I was gone. And for the first time, I started to wonder, was Sarah asking out of genuine curiosity, or was there something more behind it? I tried to push those thoughts aside, but they lingered. Over the next couple of years, things started to change. The business was flourishing, but the family dynamics were deteriorating. Ali and Sarah would visit less often, and when they did, it was never about family anymore. It was about business. It was always about what I could give them. Ali would call for money, and I'd send it. He'd ask for help with a new project, and I'd drop everything to assist. But when I needed him, when I wanted to feel like a mother again, like someone who mattered to him, he was absent. And Sarah? She was always there, quietly pulling the strings, making sure that everything worked in her favor. I remember the day. I realized how far I had fallen in their eyes. It was Christmas, and I had bought Mira, my granddaughter, a beautiful dollhouse, a gift that I thought would bring us closer, a sign that I was still the doting grandmother who loved her with all her heart. But when I gave it to Mira, Sarah's smile was tight, her words clipped. You shouldn't spoil her, she said. She doesn't need another toy. It wasn't just the dollhouse. It was the way she spoke to me, the way she treated me as though I were nothing more than an old relic, someone who was no longer important to her. And it wasn't just her. Ali stood there silently, not defending me, not stepping in to stop Sarah. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just losing my son, I was losing my place in this family altogether. They had turned their backs on me. And as I watched them walk away, I knew this wasn't just a bad phase. This was betrayal, and it was time to do something about it. The more I tried to hold on, the more they slipped away. At first, I blamed it on time. Ali was growing up. He was building his own life, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. The distance between us wasn't just physical. It was emotional. My son, the boy I had raised with love and sacrifice, was becoming a stranger to me. And every time I tried to reach out, he pulled away. It was subtle at first. The missed calls, the short replies. I'd try to invite him over for dinner, and he'd say he was too busy with work. At first, I understood. He was a young man trying to make his way in the world, but it became a pattern. Every time I reached out, there was an excuse. Every time I offered help, it was politely declined. It wasn't long before I realized it wasn't just that Ali had grown up. It was that he had grown apart from me. And then came Sarah. Remember the first time I truly felt the shift in our relationship? It wasn't just Ali anymore. It was Sarah. She had this way of controlling everything around her, and I couldn't help but feel that she was controlling Ali as well. I had hoped that their relationship would bring us closer as a family, but it felt like the opposite was happening. She became the center of Ali's world, and I, his mother, was pushed to the sidelines. She would visit, and the atmosphere in the room was always strained. Her politeness felt forced, like a mask that she had perfected over time. She never outright confronted me, but there were always subtle jabs, remarks about how I spoiled Ali when he was younger, or how I didn't manage my time well between family and business. She would ask questions that were too poignant. questions that made me feel like she was trying to figure out how much she could control. How much is your business worth now? She asked one evening, her tone light but probing. Have you thought about selling it? You know, it's never too late to retire. I looked at her, startled by the question. I had always worked so hard to build something for us, for Ali, and now here she was, asking if I was ready to give it all up. I'm not ready for retirement, Sarah, I replied, trying to keep my tone calm. There's still work to be done, but her gaze didn't soften. She had this look in her eyes, a calculating look, as if she was already thinking of what she could gain from my work. And I began to realize that I wasn't the person she was interested in, it was the business. It was always about what she could take from me, from us. As time passed, I started noticing how the distance between us, Ali and I, continued to grow. The calls became even less frequent. He would send me the occasional text, but that was all. I tried to hold on to hope, tried to convince myself that this was just a phase. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. And then there was the matter of Mira. I had hoped that she would be the one thing that could bring us back together, my granddaughter, the little girl who was going to carry on our legacy. But Sarah had other ideas. Every time I saw her, it was as if I was a stranger in her life, and the one person who could have made things right was the very person who was pushing me away. You shouldn't spoil her so much, Sarah would tell me every time I bought. Mira's something. We're raising her our way, and your gifts only confuse her. I remember the first time she said that to me. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I wasn't trying to spoil Mira. I wasn't trying to take over her life. I was just trying to love her. I had missed out on so much with Ali, and I didn't want to make the same mistake with Mira. I wanted to be there for her in a way. I couldn't be for Ali, but Sarah wasn't having it. She had her own agenda, and I was nothing more than an obstacle to her. The moment I realized how deeply I had been pushed out was when Mira was about 5. I had bought her a beautiful, handcrafted dollhouse. It was something I had hoped she would treasure for years to come. I thought it would be a beautiful gift, something to show her that I cared. But when I gave it to her, the look on Sarah's face was enough to stop my heart. Mom, we don't need this, she said, her voice tight. Mira doesn't need all these things. The sting of her words cut deep. How could she say that? I wasn't spoiling Mira. I wasn't trying to undermine her parenting. I was just trying to show my granddaughter love to make up for the time I had lost with Ali. But Sarah wasn't interested in my love or in my connection to Mira. She wasn't interested in me at all. It was in that moment that I understood I had been erased from their lives. They no longer needed me. They had everything they wanted, a successful business, a happy family, and no interference from me. They had managed to push me out one small step at a time. And Ali, my own son, he stood there, silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't say a word. He simply looked away as though he couldn't bear to be caught in the middle. That's when I realized it. My son, my flesh and blood, had chosen Sarah over me. He had chosen her over the woman who had given him everything, who had sacrificed everything for him. That was the moment everything changed for me. I had spent so many years working hard for their future, and yet here I was, standing alone, with nothing to show for it. I had given my life to this family, and they had cast me aside. I wasn't just losing my son, I was losing everything. The business, the family I had built, the future I had worked so hard to secure. It was all slipping through my fingers, and I was powerless to stop it, but I wasn't going to go quietly. No, I wasn't done. I still had something left to fight for, something that they couldn't take from me, no matter how hard they tried. Months passed, and the realization of what had happened began to set in. I could feel my heart harden with every passing day. The betrayal wasn't just the growing distance between Ali and me or the subtle manipulation from Sarah. It was the complete erasure of me from their lives, from the family I had worked so hard to build, from everything I had ever known. I wasn't just a forgotten mother. I wasn't just a woman who had been pushed aside. No, I was the one who had sacrificed everything to build something they could take and destroy. And they were doing exactly that, but I wasn't going to let them win. I had spent my entire life building a legacy for my family. I had given them my blood, sweat, and tears, and now I was ready to take back what was mine. I couldn't rely on Ali. I couldn't rely on Sarah, but I didn't need them. I had worked too hard to let everything slip away without a fight. It was time to act. The first step was clear. I had to protect the business, my legacy. I wasn't just talking about the money or the property. It was the heart of everything I had done. It was my life's work. So I began to plan carefully, methodically. I hired a lawyer, someone I could trust completely. No one in my family knew about this. It had to be kept a secret. If they found out, they would stop at nothing to undermine me, to keep everything for themselves. I began shifting things around, securing assets, making sure that when the time came, the business would be protected. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about control. It was about ensuring that when I was gone, someone who respected what I had built would take over. Someone who would honor the legacy of my hard work. Mira was the only one left who could carry it forward. I had to make sure she inherited everything. She was the only one who truly understood what it meant to work hard, to sacrifice. She wasn't like Sarah. She wasn't like Ali. Mira had the heart of an honest, good person, and I knew she would cherish what I had created. But even with the plans in place, there was still a feeling of fear in the pit of my stomach. Idea of going up against my own son, my flesh and blood, terrified me. But I had come too far. I had nothing left to lose. If they wanted to take what was mine, they would have to fight me for it. And I was ready. The day came sooner than I expected. I called Ali and Sarah over to my house. I had already made up my mind. It wasn't about trying to fix things anymore. It wasn't about reconciliation. It was about standing up for myself, about making sure that I wasn't going to be forgotten. I wanted them to understand the weight of what they had done to me, to the family, to everything I had worked for. When they arrived, I could sense the tension in the air. They had no idea what was coming. Sarah wore her usual mask of politeness, while Ali looked distracted, preoccupied. I had grown used to this, their indifference, their disregard. It was as if they had forgotten what it meant to be family. "Please, sit down," I said, my voice firm but steady. "We need to talk." Ali hesitated, glancing at Sarah, but they both sat down across from me. I could see the anxiety in their eyes. They knew something was coming. "I've made a decision," I began. "When I'm gone, this business, the company, the house, everything I've built will not go to you, Ali. It will not go to you. Sarah, it will go to someone who truly understands the value of it. Mira." There was a moment of complete silence. Ali's face turned pale. He opened his mouth to say something, but nothing came out. Sarah's expression twisted with disbelief. "You can't do that," she exclaimed, her voice sharp with anger. "This is our family business. You've worked for this for years. You can't just give it away." I remained calm, unfazed by her outburst. "I can and I am," I said. "You and Ali have shown me that you don't appreciate what I've built. You've turned your backs on me. You've let me become invisible in my own family. And now I am making sure that this legacy is not wasted on those who would throw it away." Ali stood up, his face filled with disbelief. "Mom, how can you do this to me? After everything I've done for you? After everything we've been through?" I looked him in the eye, my heart breaking, but my resolve firm. You chose her over me, Allie. You let her control everything. You stood by as she manipulated you, as she drove a wedge between us. You betrayed me, and now I'm taking back what's mine. There was nothing more to say. The damage was done. Ali, who had once been my pride and joy, stood there, unable to comprehend the decision I had made. Sarah, who had been so sure of herself, was now standing at the edge of losing everything she had wanted so badly. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't filled with rage or resentment. I had simply come to terms with the fact that I had done everything I could to love and protect my family, but love wasn't enough. You can give everything to someone, but sometimes they'll still turn away from you. And that's when you have to make a choice. You either let them take everything from you, or you fight back. The aftermath was inevitable. They tried to contest the will, to argue that I was out of my mind, that I couldn't possibly have meant it. But I had made my decisions clear. I had taken every precaution. The law upheld my wishes. The business, my home, my legacy, all of it was transferred to Mira, the only one who had proven she could carry it forward with the same love and respect that I had put into it. Allie and Sarah were left with nothing. They fought tooth and nail, but in the end they lost. The things they had taken for granted, my love, my time, my sacrifices, were now gone, and they could never get them back. I walked away from that chapter of my life, finally at peace. I had taken back everything they had tried to take from me, not out of anger or revenge, but out of necessity. It wasn't about punishing them. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my legacy, and my place in the world. Mara inherited the business, and she carried it forward with the honor and respect I had always hoped for. She never forgot where it came from, and she never took it for granted. The business thrived under her leadership, and I knew that, in the end, it was in good hands. As for me, I learned that sometimes the hardest lessons in life are the ones that teach you how to stand up for yourself. I had loved my family with everything I had, but in the end, it was my strength, my resolve that carried me through. I took back what was mine, and I'll never let anyone forget that.